Dress of the worshiper. So, of course, now that we have mentioned and discussed in detail, what does it mean to be pure? And of course, what are the things that are impure? And when we talked about the impurities, of course, those impurities cannot be on your clothes. And if they are, then you should wash them off. So number one requirement, without, it's a given that basically you should have clean and pure clothes. And by dress, I don't mean a dress that you wear for a wedding or something. It's basically a dress code of the worshiper, right? And again, for both men and women. Now, it's important to know that men are created differently, women are created differently. They both have different needs. At the end of the day, they are equal in the sight of Allah, in the eyes of Allah, but they are different rulings. So of course, there's going to be, they all have to pray 5 times a day, but we already mentioned how in the case of a woman on menses, she can skip her prayers and she doesn't have to make them up. But that's of course not the case for men. They're never going to have a chance where they are able to skip their prayers. So different cases, the way we were created, and there's different rules for men and women, and we'll be finding out about these later. But again, when it comes to wudu, it's the same thing. But when it comes to dress of the worshiper, it is different. Now remember that clean and pure clothes, of course, is important. At the same time, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that, O children of Adam, this is a verse from Quran, O children of Adam, talking to human beings, take your adornment, wear your clean clothes at every masjid, and eat and drink, but waste not by extravagance. Certainly He, Allah, likes not those who waste by extravagance. So Allah is actually commanding us to wear clean and good clothes. Make sure when you're coming in front of Allah, make sure that you are presentable. But the key is that, there's minimum requirements and there's some recommendations. So what is a minimum requirement? So I'll give you an easy one for men. Again, this is minimum requirement for men. It is from their navel to knee. Okay, so between your navel and knee, I should put between, not because in some cases most of the scholars say that it's below your navel and above your knee, because the hadith that talks about it is actually saying between navel and knee. And of course, this is giving you the minimum requirement, because in our normal days, of course, we're not going to be walking around with our shirt off and only having, wearing shorts that cover from navel to knee. But that is the minimum requirement. Between navel and knee, you should make sure that you are covered. Of course, when you're going to go down in different positions, there is a chance that your clothes can be above your knee, or can go below, a little bit below your navel. So of course, take your precaution and make sure that you are wearing nice and clean clothes. Now, during the times of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, people did not have enough clothes. Nowadays, we all have closets full of clothes. So there's a recommendation. There's a recommendation that you should cover your shoulders. Cover your shoulders. Okay, and they cannot. You can't be wearing tight. In our nowadays, we got skinny jeans going on. You're in front of Allah. Make sure that your body parts are not apparent, in terms of especially your private parts. So you don't be making sure that you got to be wearing, you're not wearing tight clothes. Recommendation is cover your shoulders. Again, I'll let you know that some scholars say that you must, because again, in the time of Prophet, they were told that minimum requirement is navel to knee. But if you have longer clothes, more clothes, then make sure that you cover your shoulders. And we all do have all praise to Allah that He has given us food and clothes, and we all are able to. If we're not, of course, minimum requirement is navel to knee, but you should be able to cover your shoulders. So cover them up. Make sure you look good. Make sure your clothes are clean and they're not tight. And that's, without going, too complicated, this is all what you need to know. Okay, make sure your clothes are not too tight, and make sure they're, you're try your best to cover your shoulders. Just wear normal pants and shirts, and navel to knee is a minimum requirement that you should be covered. Now, if I look into now again for women, I've already answered that the requirement for women and men are different. So the best thing that I could do was, show you a picture um, of how a woman should be dressed. Again, there's a hadith that the wife of Prophet Muhammad, her name is Salama. She's saying an adult woman should perform salah in a shawl and long top shirt in which even her feet are covered. So again, different cultures will have different way of their Islamic dress, but the key is they're loose. They're not showing any of your body parts. Besides your face and your hand, everything is covered, including your feet. And this is basically the minimum requirement for a woman when she is praying. And for men, we have already discussed that he should be covered from at least from navel to knee. But the recommendation is, of course, your shoulder should be covered as well. Now, some of the other recommendations as well, and I'll be mentioning again, everything is backed up by proof, by a verse from Quran or a hadith of Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him. Of course, comments by scholars. There's always going to be some minor difference of opinions here and there, but I'll be mentioning most of them. Again, this is a recommendation. It's okay if you don't have a cap or a turban or something like that, but of course, covering your head is recommended, but definitely your prayer is accepted. And I'm talking about men, because I've already given a picture of how a woman should be dressed when she's praying. Now, there are circumstances for men in terms of covering your head. It is not mandatory, but it is definitely recommended. And in fact, some scholars do go to a point by saying that you must be covering your head, but it is it's not mandatory. It is definitely a recommendation. Another one is your garment. Again, this is for men. Hanging below the ankles. Now, some scholars say that you must be having clothes above your ankles. Now, this is important to know that during the time of Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessing be upon him, not many people had a lot of clothes, and those who did, in order to show off, they would be having long, garments, kind of like what royalty would have or kings, and they would be basically dragging their clothes behind them while they're walking to show how much money did they have, and that was a sign of arrogance. So Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessing be upon him, he forbade, and he said that you must not have your clothes below your ankles. Now, there are narrations as well where one of the companion of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he was a very skinny person, and his clothes will drag below his ankles, and Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam said that it's okay for you, because again, it's about intention. Why are you dragging your clothes below your ankles? So again, you will see some differences in this case about garment hanging below your ankles. So some people say your pants should be above your ankles when you're praying, and you will notice at the mosques that people are, I'm talking about men, of course, because women, they must be having something like I said in this case. Your clothes are below your ankles, of course, but in the case of men, it should be above your ankles. And if it's in our culture, it is not considered arrogance, but some scholars do say that it must be above, but others say it's okay because you're not doing it out of arrogance. Some other issues: wearing shoes. Now, when you go to the mosque, most of the mosques in these days have carpets. Bringing shoes is not something that you should be doing anyways. It's on a carpet. That's not something that we do. But again, if it comes to about whether it's permissible or not, yes, it is permissible to be wearing shoes while you're praying. So when you're traveling and you're in the parking lot and it's time for prayer, there's no mosque or there's no Muslims around, you have to pray in the parking lot. So it's sometimes very convenient to keep your shoes on. So the key is make sure that your shoes don't have anything, any impurity on your shoes. And if they're clean, then yes, it's okay for you to be praying in your shoes. But now, just because you're allowed doesn't mean that you just walk in a mosque and say, hey, you know what, I'm allowed to pray in my shoes, and you just walk in. Because a general rule in our culture is that we're not allowed to be walking in on carpet with our shoes on. So it's okay to pray with your shoes on, but again, when you're outside, and make sure that your shoes are clean. Another point is tying the hair. So if your hair are tied, if you got long hair, and this is talking about men, if you got long hair, you should untie them. Okay, so basically, I should say untie your hair, because again, this is something. It's okay for you to tie your hair and walk around and go to work or whatnot, but when comes time for prayer, it's a must that if you have long hair and you usually tie them, you should untie your hair while you're performing your salah. And another point that's worth mentioning is distractions on clothes. So the point is, if you got pictures on your shirt, and while you pray you're looking at it, it can distract you. You should not be wearing clothes which have distractions on, or even having pictures or other objects that are distracting to you around you, because you want to make sure that you have 100% full attention, concentration while you're praying, and not having any type of distractions around you. So that's part of the code of the dress code of the worshiper, that he or she has to make sure that there's no distractions on your clothes. Now, another important point is silk for men. Silk and gold for men. It is okay for women in Islam to be wearing silk and gold, but for a man, it is not okay. So make sure that, and sometimes you will notice that if you're wearing a tie, when you go and buy a tie, and it's time for a wedding, you're buying a tie, and most of the ties have silk in it. You wear that silk tie, then you go to the the wedding, and it's time for prayer. And of course, you're going to pray in it. It is not allowed for you to be, and this is not just talking about prayer. Men in general should not be wearing clothes which are made out of silk or have gold in it. But it's okay for women, but not for men. So let's keep that in mind. Make sure there's no silk, no distraction on your clothes. Untie your hair. You're allowed to wear shoes while you're praying. And I have already mentioned garments hanging below the ankles. Again, difference of opinion, but the key is don't do it out of arrogance. And cover your head if you can, but it's okay if you don't have a cap or anything like that to cover your head. But it's definitely recommended. And for women, just look at this. And again, you can find this type of dress. What it is it's a cover, and you can put this on top of your jeans or whatever else you wear, and keep this. And then this is a head covering as well. And you can find them anywhere. And you notice that this is loose clothing, right? Loose clothing. That's a must as well. And you can find these at a mosque, at a bookstore, and there's a bunch of websites out there where you can order these, especially from UK. You can order, these are called abayas. Okay, abaya, that's basically the long dress for women, or you can also search for hijab, which is a head covering. So look for these and have again, we will get to this later on. This is not the time to be discussing this, but a woman in general, when she's going out in public, should be dressed like this as well, and not just for prayer time. But if you're just a new Muslim or just starting out, at least when you're about to pray and you're in front of Allah, make sure that you are dressed properly, and don't be just wearing tight jeans and or whatever else that you are used to wearing, and then just put a head covering on. Sometimes you will notice that a woman will just put the head covering on, and at the bottom it will be just jeans. That's not allowed. Make sure that you're covered like this, loose. You can't tell. Your body parts are all covered, only your face and your hand is showing. Your feet are covered, and this is something that is a must for a woman, even when she's outside. And we're not discussing that topic right now, but at least for your prayer, make sure that you start getting used to wearing this type of dress. And you can search this at your local bookstore, Islamic bookstore, or even websites. Just search for abaya or hijab.